Phil, let's talk the pacing of Pentiment, because oh boy, this game has some pacing issues for me.
Whenever you look up time to beats online or you look up full walkthroughs, they're they're bullshit. This is like mainlining every dialogue tree. It's if you know exactly where to go and add 5 hours to whatever you see if you actually want to do any level of exploring, or even if you're just working through the game at a normal pace. The onboarding to this game, if it was 15 hours, I would say the onboarding was like 4 hours.
Yeah.
It's too much. I mean, it's like to learn every character and every backstory, and then most of them have play no role in the end conflict of what's going on. And you feel like, why did I go have this 30-minute dialogue with this person who provided me with no clues and no information to what I should be doing? Um, is just you got to trim that. This is where you got to go with your editing team and get rid of a lot of that useless information.
I would agree completely. I think you and I we are playing this game at the same time, and then we both kind of hit Act Two around the same time frame, and it was like, wow, Act One was all table setting, and now it's paying off in Act Two, and then like you have this big payoff at the beginning of Act Two, and then you kind of get into the weeds about a 30% of the way through Act Two, and all of a sudden you're in the same situation where it's just like I'm poking around, reading all these dialogue trees, what matters, what doesn't, and now I know that I have to wait for another payoff. Like that is really where it bogged down for me. It was like mid act two, and then act two like picks up again, and now I'm in act three, and I'm like kind of in that same bubble where it's like, hey, you can do all these things and talk to all these people, and I'm like, why? And if half of these conversations don't matter in the grand scheme of things, I'm even less motivated to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that its gift is also its curse, right? And that is one of the things that the game does really well is that you're trying to solve these mysteries and they don't give you all the information. And I think that in some ways that's a good thing because it adds to like, well, I don't have enough time to make all of the choices, so I should make the ones that I think are the best. And I'm going to have to come to the end table not having everything available to me. But it's also the curse too, because as you go through the game, you realize that most of it was futile, and you probably didn't even need to have 50% of those dialogues, and you could have just, gone mainlined it, just gone with the main person, and it wouldn't have changed any outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I really have a lot of questions about this game that I'm gonna have to Google after I'm done playing it. Like, because it is a murder mystery, so it's like, who was the murderer? Who was the person? I hope that's revealed. I mean, there's been mystery in Acts 1 and 2, and it has not been revealed to me yet. The other thing that I would say in regard to the dialogue feeling futile is that, or futile, is that you're essentially talking to some of these people, and then at the end of some of the conversations, they'll do a dice roll on whether you've met enough of these random checkpoints to convince them. I think I failed 95% of them. And I feel
Yeah.
like I'm answering correctly, and then it gets to the end, it's like, red, 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 too bad, you're gonna fail this. And I'm like, dude, I can't even make one person happy. Like, I don't even know which person to try to hook my wagon to like feel like I'm siding with them because I'm trying to do all of these different dialogue options, and essentially I'm failing at all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I ran into that just a little bit ago as I'm wrapping up Act Two, where I'm starting to realize that that's part of it, but you don't really know which questions are the key questions, which in some ways is good because it's a more authentic experience. But like I said before, it also is bad because it does make everything feel kind of useless. Like you can just kind of click through. I mean, I would be interested to know this is going to be a game that is going to be decided by the ending. And many times when you watch a thriller or a horror movie on TV, you get down to the ending and the ending makes or breaks everything. If it has this big explosive ending where it all fits together, you might come back after the fact and go, actually, this game was amazing. But if it doesn't, if it kind of ends in some sort of haphazardly way where you're going, okay, this is sort of ambiguous. It's sort of just like neutral, and we don't really get to find out the things that we want as the consumer. You're gonna give it a lower score. Oh, in the overall.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And the ending will really dictate how the rest of the series will be looked back on in my mind. I mean, you look at something like Game of Thrones, where they botched the last, like, what, three or five, six episodes. And then everybody was like, that series, you know what I mean? But everything in the lead up was really good. The last thing I'll say is, like, in regard to pacing with Pentiment, I'm a kind of gamer that really likes a checklist. Like if you put me in a world and you say, "Hey, do these 5 things," I'm going to do it as efficiently as possible. And in this game, so much of that is not exposed or brought to the top of the player's attention that it feels like I'm drifting. And when it feels like I'm drifting and not getting in and accomplishing even something very minor in each play session, it causes me not to enjoy the experience as much. Now, maybe it's the way I'm wired. Maybe it's because I try to play as many games as I can and get as many experiences in a year that I can as well. This is a game that is going to thrive off of somebody that wants to let this thing breathe. Like, this feels like, hey, I have a whole summer in a cabin in the woods and I'm just going to poke at this every 2 or 3 days. But in
Yeah.
actuality, like, that's never going to be me. I'm never going to be that person when it comes to a game like this. So I just think it's, for me, it's kind of like oil and water in regard to my personality and what it's offering. I can appreciate it, I can respect it, but at the same time, the pacing is so slow and rambling and not poignant enough that I'm really, really having difficulty sticking with this title and enjoying it all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I mean, like I said, there are moments where things you just have to cut the dialogue trees down and add more cutscenes in because for a gamer, right?
Hmm.
The cutscene is the ultimate reward. The cutscene is I did these things, I showed competency, I showed that I understand the mechanics, and the payoff is that I get this, right? I get a cutscene, I get a cool video. That's my dopamine, that's my reward, that's my carrot, that's my cookie or milk, whatever you want to call it. Um, that the exciting moments where random things just happen are just too far in between, and the dialogue trees are just so excessively long. You just needed to break them up a little bit more and add in a little bit more video clips, add in a little bit more things. Like I said, you can create sort of an art house piece, um, like an ode to gaming for like the intellectual if you want. That's great. And you can do that. It doesn't make it fun.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it fun. It doesn't make it interesting. And the concept is interesting, and from what I had briefly read, it's historically accurate, which does add some intrigue to the story. So like history buffs are gonna love it. But something that's boring is boring. And like I know people have different opinions, but
No, I mean you nailed it on the head for me. Like it has a historical tie-in, so somebody's gonna love it in terms of a historical standpoint. But really, it's an art house film. Like you've nailed it. Like the art, the way it all ties together. It's like yes, this is a piece of art, but it's not that fun to play. You know what I mean? I don't leave the museum being like, wow, that was a lot of fun. You know what I mean? Yeah, I completely
yeah,
agree.
yeah. I mean that's how I'm doing it because I want to be open-minded. It's like when you go out to eat some food that maybe you wouldn't normally eat, and you're like, "Oh, let's give this a shot again." And then you're like, "Yep, this is all the reasons why I don't like this food." And then I go, I need more dopamine. I need more shooting stuff and numbers going up, and I need
Action.
more killing things and action, and I need more like fluidity. And I think that you could make a game that like you could make a written only game that did that, but you would need to add in more sound effects. You would need to add in more cutscenes. You would need to break up the dialogue trees. You would need to make it honestly more linear to
Mhm.
where you're not making a ton of useless choices and you're not going because there's nothing worse to where you get to the end and you realize like you're not going to be able to figure out who did it in act 1 or act 2 as far as I can tell. I mean, I just described who I thought did it in act 2 and I actually had two choices. I think that you actually had one because you mainlined it.
I was done. I was like, yeah, we need to get through this game because I'm about to hate quit this thing. So I just
So
started like
so
running at it. So yeah, I got it. And it's
I
like, here's the one person you can accuse. Cute.
I think that if you could actually figure out who did it and if there was a way to do that accurately, there would be more incentive to explore those dialogue trees and to do that because at this point I get what's going on. You're
Mhm.
not being given all the information on purpose. You can't simply gather it. Um, So it's all going to depend on the ending. But for me, the pacing was just so ungodly slow. Not just the onboarding, but the pacing between action points was so slow. They just needed more action points in there.
And I would argue that they have no action points. Like none. Like someone gets murdered. That's like the highlight of it, right? Or someone gets angry that you had dinner and said something to somebody, right? I mean, there's really not that much action here. There's story turns, but like even then you're like, okay, that was cool.